A Plymouth Montego sits abandoned on a frozen mountain road. Half a tank of gas. Doors unlocked. 5 men's lives scattered inside. It's February 1978. The car should never have been here. These 5 men drove 70 miles in the wrong direction, past their own homes, into a freezing wilderness. 4 of them would never come home alive. The 5th would vanish completely. And nothing about this case will ever make sense. This is Yuba City, California. February 24th, 1978. 5 men went to a basketball game. Only their car would return. Ted Wire, 32 years old, beloved, called the nicest guy you'd ever meet. Jack Madruga, 35, quiet, dependable. Jackie Hoot, 24, gentle-natured. Bill Sterling, 43, father of 2. Gary Mathias, 25, working at a local cannery. They weren't just 5 men, they were the neighborhood. All 5 had intellectual disabilities or psychiatric conditions. In Yuba City, that didn't matter. They were integrated into the community, respected, included. Neighbors knew them by name. Local businesses gave them jobs. They lived semi-independent lives, supported by family and the fabric of their town. That night, they went to watch their local high school team play basketball. A normal night, a safe night, or so everyone thought. The game ended. The 5 men left in Ted Wire's 1972 Plymouth Montego. They were supposed to drive home. They never did. Instead, the Plymouth traveled north, then east, then up into the Sierra Nevada mountains, toward snow, toward cold, toward a place none of them had any reason to go. 70 miles from home, 70 miles in the wrong direction, into wilderness, into February snow, into something that terrified them, because somewhere on that mountain road, something happened. Something so frightening that 5 grown men abandoned a running car, with heat, with shelter, with safety. They ran into snow, into darkness, into mountains so remote that search teams would struggle for weeks to find them. What were they running from? Days later, authorities found the Plymouth exactly where it was abandoned. Cold, empty, the keys still inside, the engine still running. They would search for weeks. Bloodhounds, helicopters, hundreds of volunteers combing the mountains. The case would become known as California's own Dyatlov Pass, like the infamous Russian hiking tragedy. 5 men would vanish into a mountain wilderness under impossible circumstances. But unlike Russia, America was watching, and America had no answers. 46 years later, the case remains unsolved. We still don't know why they drove into the mountains. We still don't know what they were fleeing, and we still don't know if anyone is responsible for what happened that night. This is their story. 5 men, 1 impossible night, and a mystery that defies every rational explanation. Welcome to the Yuba County Five, February 24th, 1978. 5 young men drive through the California night, unaware it's their last evening alive. Gary Mathias, 25, a quiet, responsible man who lived with his parents and worked construction. Tonight, he's excited. His basketball tournament starts tomorrow morning. Beside him sits Jack Whitt, 24, a mechanic's son, dependable, the kind of friend who shows up on time and calls his family when plans change. Bill Sterling, 29, the oldest, a steady presence with a steady job. He'd been friends with Gary since high school, almost a decade of trust between them. David Yarn, 22, the youngest, still living with his parents. He worked part-time and attended junior college, a boy building toward adulthood, careful and structured. And Greg Cadell, 20, the high school friend newly reconnected with the group. He lived with his mother. All 5 had one thing in common. They were tethered to routine, to family expectation, to being where they said they'd be. They arrive at Chico State's basketball arena, a Friday night tournament game. The atmosphere is electric. These men are excited about their own competition tomorrow. their own moment to compete, to be seen, to matter. Inside, they watch the game with the focus of athletes who understand movement, strategy, timing. They're among hundreds of spectators, anonymous, ordinary, unremarkable. This is simply how they spent their Friday nights. The game ends around 10 p.m. They leave the arena and drive through Chico's quiet downtown streets. It's cool, clear, predictable. Nothing feels unusual. They stop at a convenience store, their last confirmed sighting by anyone who knows them. They go inside for snacks, soda, candy. The ordinary purchases of young men returning home after an evening out. They have work tomorrow. David has class. They have families expecting them back. Nobody working there that night remembers them as unusual. They weren't rowdy. They weren't drunk. They were just 5 ordinary young men buying snacks before driving home. A routine they'd performed countless times before. They leave the store around 10:15 p.m. They get back in the Chevrolet van. The night is clear. The roads are empty. They're heading toward home, toward their families, toward tomorrow's tournament. They're heading toward disappearance. What happened in the next hours remains unknown. But we know this: none of these 5 men ever arrived home. None of them called their families. None of them showed up for the basketball tournament the next morning. The Chico Five vanished between that convenience store and their homes. No bodies were ever found. No crime scene was ever discovered. Their disappearance remains one of California's deepest unsolved mysteries. November 24th, 1986. A Tuesday morning that would shatter everything the Madruga and Pereira families believed about direction, choice, and control. The tournament. That was all anyone talked about. An obsession, a destination marked on calendars, circled in red, discussed for weeks. Daniel and Jacinto were supposed to arrive. The families waited. Hours passed. Phones rang. Confusion became concern. Concern became dread. By November 26th, 72 hours of silence had transformed a simple no-show into something darker. Police were called. Missing persons reports filed. The search began. Then came the discovery that would defy every rational explanation. The car, the white sedan, found 70 miles north, high in the mountains, on a road that made no sense. Plumas National Forest, elevation rising to over 5,000 feet. A treacherous mountain passage through terrain that twisted and climbed without mercy. No reason, no explanation, no logic. The men feared the cold. They despised mountains. They avoided darkness. Yet here was their car, positioned exactly where terror should have driven them away. But the car itself told a different story. The engine, still functional. The fuel tank, nearly full. No damage, no collision, no sign of mechanical failure or struggle. Madruga was meticulous, obsessive about his vehicle. He knew every sound, every response, every quirk of that car intimately. He would never drive it recklessly into mountain terrain. The geography was wrong. Everything about this destination was wrong. The car shouldn't be there. The men shouldn't have driven there. Yet they had. 70 miles, a journey northward that contradicted everything known about these men. A route that led away from their destination, away from safety, away from home. No witnesses reported seeing the car on that route. No gas station attendant recalled them stopping. No highway patrol officer logged an encounter. They simply vanished from the rational world. And then they were gone from the car too. Vanished completely. The mountain had swallowed them. The cold they feared. The darkness they hated. These had become their new reality. The question that haunts investigators to this day: how did they arrive at a place they had no reason to go? Who or what guided them there? What force rewrote their destination? On November 9th, 1978, a Buick Montego sat abandoned on a dirt road in northeastern Maine. What was found inside would defy every rational explanation. State police arrived to discover the vehicle barely stuck, not wedged, not damaged. The engine remained functional, Mechanical inspection revealed no failure whatsoever. Inside, investigators found what should have kept the occupants safe: a full tank of gasoline, maps still folded on the seats, food, warmth from the engine block. The vehicle could have been freed easily. Local authorities tested the extraction. A single car, a rope, or even walking back down the road, all viable options abandoned for reasons the missing men never revealed. No signs of struggle scarred the interior. No defensive wounds marked any recovered clothing. No evidence suggested coercion. Yet 3 men, Weher, Bailey, and Tetrell, vanished from a car they could have simply walked away from. Then, weeks after the disappearance, a witness emerged from the darkness of that November night. A motorist traveling the same rural route reported seeing vehicles stopped near the Montego's location around the time the men vanished. The motorist's account mentioned figures near the road, movement, possibly the men themselves. Yet the description remained vague, the timeline uncertain, and the witness never came forward publicly until the investigation had grown cold. Investigators faced an impossible question. Had these phantom witnesses actually seen something, or had weeks of anxiety and suggestion contaminated their memory? The truth remained locked in that November darkness. The Buick Montego became a physical contradiction, a vehicle of escape that witnessed a vanishing, not stolen, not forced, simply left behind, as if whatever happened demanded a departure on foot into Maine's unforgiving wilderness. Winter arrived with merciless speed. By November, the Sierra Nevada was a white tomb. Search and rescue teams mobilized immediately. But the mountain had other plans. Blizzards swept across the terrain with biblical fury, erasing footprints within hours. Each storm buried hope deeper beneath the ice. Helicopters that could have spotted survivors were grounded. Bad weather made aerial reconnaissance impossible for weeks. The mountain kept its secrets locked beneath the snow. Ground teams searched through December. They found nothing. No shelter, no equipment, no bodies. Nothing but silence and snow. January arrived. The temperatures plummeted below 0 Fahrenheit. Any man exposed to these elements would have survived perhaps hours, maybe days at most. Barbara Nauer received no calls, no ransom demands, no explanations. Her husband Lloyd was somewhere in that frozen expanse, or he was gone entirely. The other families waited in California towns, checking phones obsessively. 4 months, 120 days of agonizing uncertainty. Hope is a dangerous companion. Families told themselves the men might have found shelter. Perhaps they were waiting for rescue, alive but hidden. But the numbers were against them. 5 men, minimal supplies, no winter gear, sub-freezing nights that lasted 14 hours. The mathematics of survival did not favor hope. Searchers faced their own demons. The terrain was a labyrinth. Gullies opened unexpectedly. Cliffs hid behind whiteout conditions. Men could vanish 50 feet from rescue. February brought no new evidence. The snow deepened. Rescue operations became recovery missions. The families understood the shift in language. Dogs trained to find human remains worked the slopes. They found nothing. Either the bodies were buried too deep beneath the snow, or they were never there at all. The psychological toll was immense. Families faced 2 unbearable possibilities. Their loved ones froze in the wilderness, or they were taken by someone, somewhere, for reasons unknown. By spring, the snow began to recede. The mountain gradually released its grip. But what searchers found, or failed to find, would perplex them for decades. In June 1978, as snow melted across the Sierra Nevada, searchers made a discovery that would transform bewilderment into horror. 19.4 miles from the abandoned Yana sedan, they found a remote Forest Service trailer, weathered and isolated among the trees. Inside lay Ted Wire. What searchers discovered defied every logical explanation for his death. The trailer contained everything necessary for survival: canned food, stacked and accessible, fuel for warmth, matches for fire, bedding, blankets, sheets, everything to endure the merciless winter. Yet Ted Wire had perished. Not from cold, not from hunger in the traditional sense. His body told a different, incomprehensible story. Medical examiners estimated he had wasted away over 2 to 3 months, losing between 80 and 100 pounds. His frame had become skeletal despite food surrounding him. His feet bore the cruel signature of severe frostbite, blackened, gangrenous tissue that had deteriorated over weeks. But his shoes were gone, mysteriously absent. Someone or something had arranged sheets over his body, tucked them carefully around him, as if preparing him for eternal sleep in that cold, desolate box. The contradiction was suffocating. Survival had been possible. Warmth existed. Food remained. And yet Ted Wire lay dead in a tomb of contradictions. The question that would haunt investigators forever: why did a man surrounded by salvation choose, or was forced to choose, slow, agonizing death? The presence of those carefully arranged sheets suggested intervention, another consciousness in that trailer, another mind making decisions about Ted Wire's final moments. But who? Where were the other missing hikers during these 2 to 3 months of slow deterioration? How could they survive if Ted could not? Or did they? The shoes told their own disturbing story. Their absence implied desperation or removal by someone else. Frostbite without protection. Progressive, excruciating tissue death over weeks. Ted Wire did not starve in the conventional sense. Autopsies would reveal a stomach containing digested food. He had eaten. He had access to nourishment. The medical conclusion: starvation in the presence of food. Not malnutrition from scarcity, but from something else entirely. Psychological breakdown, surrender, or something far more sinister. The carefully tucked sheets became the most haunting detail. They suggested care, preparation, ritualism, a deliberate act of positioning a body for discovery, or for something unknowable. The trailer transformed from shelter into mausoleum, from hope into nightmare, from mystery into something darker, a question mark written in human tragedy. Inside the trailer, a pantry full of canned goods, enough to sustain 5 men for over a year. Yet they starved. The question that haunts every investigator: why did they not eat? Why did they not light the fires? Why did they choose slow death over survival? The human mind, under extreme duress, becomes a stranger to reason. Fear rewires the brain. Panic erases logic. Despair whispers that survival is already impossible. The trailer contained enough wood and coal to maintain warmth. Yet the fires remained cold. The men huddled together in the darkness, their body heat fading with each passing night. Hypothermia does not simply kill. It transforms judgment. The freezing mind becomes paranoid. It convinces itself that movement is dangerous, that effort is futile, that rest is the only option. The canned goods remained largely untouched, a heartbreaking testament to the collapse of rational behavior. Men do not choose starvation when food surrounds them, unless something deeper has broken inside. But the mystery deepens. Charles Wire's ring vanished. His money disappeared, and evidence suggested something even more troubling. Someone remained with him at the end, someone who stayed while he died. The autopsy revealed no signs of violence on Wire's body, yet his possessions were gone. The tent was arranged with careful attention. Someone had been there. Someone had waited. Did Wire die first? Was he already dead when the ring was taken? Or did a companion, driven to madness by hunger and cold, take it as a final gesture of farewell or betrayal? The human mind under siege becomes incomprehensible to those who have never experienced such terror. Logic surrenders. Instinct becomes unreliable. The will to survive paradoxically abandons those who need it most. Starvation alongside abundance. Fire materials left unused. Warmth rejected. Survival rejected. This is the true horror of the Colville case. Not death, but the collapse of the human will to live. The investigation concluded with more questions than answers. Who tended to Charles Wire? Who took his ring? And most importantly, what had they all experienced that made survival seem like the greater cruelty? In the mountains of California, the darkness kept its secrets, but the forest, indifferent and hungry, would eventually surrender them. September 1922. Searchers combing the remote terrain around Lake Tahoe discovered the first grim evidence. Along a desolate mountain road, they found the scattered remains of two men. Captain Charles Madruga and Guard William Sterling lay among the rocks and brush. Their bodies bore no signs of struggle, no weapons nearby, just silence and abandonment. But the tragedies were far from complete. Near the abandoned trailer where their ordeal began, searchers discovered more remains. Daniel Jensen Hute, the youngest convict, had not survived the night. His body was severely decomposed, scattered by animals that had claimed the mountain as their own. Reconstruction was nearly impossible. His family would never know the exact moment he perished. Most haunting of all, Jackie Hewitt, the young boy, was discovered near Wire, miles from where his father lay. He had not been lost alone in the chaos. The proximity suggested a terrible truth. In those final hours of darkness, some prisoners had remained together while others scattered in panic. The group had fractured, but one man was never found. Gary Mathias, the convict with psychiatric history, the only prisoner physically capable of intelligent leadership, vanished without a trace from the mountains. Only fragments of his clothing appeared near Weir days later. A shoe, scraps of fabric, but no body, no bones, no definitive answer to where Gary Mathias spent his final moments. The question haunted investigators then and haunts us now. Did he wander deeper into the wilderness, beyond recovery? Did he orchestrate the escape and flee successfully into anonymity? 3 bodies accounted for, 1 man missing. The scattered remains told fragmented stories, each body a separate tragedy, each distance between them a barrier to understanding what truly transpired. The mountains had claimed their prisoners, but they refused to reveal their complete secrets. In the spaces between the bodies lay an enigma that would endure for generations. When a group of people abandons safety and runs into darkness, the first question is always, why? What force, seen or unseen, compels rational minds towards self-destruction? The Chowchilla incident has spawned 3 dominant theories. Each attempts to unlock the mystery. None fully closes the door. Theory 1. Mass panic. Witnesses reported feeling suffocated in the buried bus, a claustrophobic pressure building. Could shared oxygen deprivation have triggered collective disorientation? Dr. Leon Ratwani, the bus driver, exhibited remarkable composure. Yet beneath that calm, survivors reported an undefined dread, a feeling that something was terribly wrong beyond the obvious. Oxygen levels do deplete in sealed spaces. Could hypoxia have confused their judgment, making the buried bus feel like a death trap rather than shelter? Theory 2 is darker, a perceived threat. Survivors described an undefined fear, as if something or someone drove them uphill into the cold night. Was there a hostile presence in that bus? Authority figures were present. Panic can be weaponized by fear of those in power, or fear of the unknown wearing their face. No evidence directly supports this, yet the pattern, coordinated flight, the specific route uphill, suggests leadership, not random panic. Someone made a decision. Someone was followed. Theory 3 examines collective psychological fragility. These were vulnerable people, institutionalized patients, some with histories of trauma, confined in darkness underground. Psychological conditioning mattered. Years in institutions had trained them to respond to authority without question. When that authority, real or imagined, commanded flight, they obeyed. Yet this theory struggles with one persistent question. Why would they flee towards certain death? Psychological training does not override survival instinct. Then there is Gary Mathias, the question that divides investigators: victim or catalyst. His psychiatric condition was severe. His medication, missing that night, was critical. Matthias was a skilled mechanic, intelligent but prone to episodes of extreme behavior. Without his medication, his baseline psychological state was unpredictable, potentially volatile. Some investigators theorize Matthias experienced a severe psychiatric break in the buried bus. In that state, could he have convinced others to flee? Could his panic have become their panic? Yet no witness placed Matthias at the forefront of the exodus. No one reported him commanding the evacuation. The evidence remains frustratingly ambiguous. The truth may be that Matthias was as much a victim as the others, driven by forces he could not control, stripped of medication and stability, caught in a collective event beyond individual agency. This brings us to the Dyatlov Pass. Soviet hikers in 1959. Irrational flight into deadly cold, abandoned shelter, inexplicable death. The parallels are striking and impossible to ignore. Both groups fled safety for certain death. Both showed signs of panic, yet both followed a coherent path. Both left evidence suggesting an invisible pressure, something that overrode rational survival behavior. In Dyatlov Pass, some attributed the flight to an avalanche. In Chowchilla, the buried bus itself became the threat. Yet in both cases, the true mechanism remains unknown. Could mass psychogenic illness have triggered both events? A shared delusion, a collective hallucination born from stress, confinement, and psychological vulnerability. Psychologists have documented such phenomena. Entire groups experiencing identical symptoms: terror, compulsion to flee, sensory distortions, with no external cause. It is rare but documented. Yet labeling Chowchilla as mass psychogenic illness feels like surrender. It explains nothing. It merely assigns a clinical name to the mystery without unlocking it. The deeper truth may be this: the Chowchilla incident resists singular explanation because it was caused by multiple converging factors: environmental, psychological, and circumstantial. Oxygen deprivation lowered cognitive function. Institutional psychological conditioning made them compliant to commands. A feared or misunderstood figure, possibly Matthias, triggered flight. The outcome was coordinated panic, dressed as logic. This theory does not solve Chowchilla. It merely contextualizes the tragedy within human limits. Limits of oxygen, psychology, perception, and decision-making under extreme stress. What remains certain is this: 16 people made a choice that night. A choice so catastrophic, so contrary to survival instinct, that we are still searching for the mechanism that forced it. The theories in the dark are many, but none fully explain why rational people run toward death. And perhaps that impossibility, that fundamental resistance to reason, is the true mystery of Chowchilla. 47 years have passed since 5 men vanished in the Sierra Nevada foothills. The mountains still keep their silence. Ted Wyer's family never recovered from that January night in 1978. They buried an empty casket, a symbol of their impossible grief. Jack Madruga's wife waited for decades, holding on to hope that her husband might walk through the door. That hope became a prison of its own. The official investigation concluded in confusion. 5 hikers, 1 car on the wrong road, 4 bodies recovered, 1 man vanished completely. The answers never came. Why would experienced hikers take a road leading away from their destination? Why did they leave that car, and where was it really found? The contradictions multiply with each passing year. The bodies bore signs of extreme starvation, yet the car contained supplies. Men who knew wilderness survival somehow died of hunger beside food they apparently never ate. Gary Matthias, 32 years old, gentle soul, vanished without a trace. Not a whisper of evidence, not a single bone, not even a name in any police report. Theories emerged and disappeared like fog. Some suggested foul play, others blamed the wilderness itself. A few whispered of something darker, something the mountains refused to reveal. The Yuba County Sheriff never closed this case, not because they solved it, but because they never understood it. Some mysteries refuse resolution. Those mountains remain unchanged. Snow still falls. Wind still whispers through the pines. And somewhere in that vast wilderness, the truth sleeps undisturbed. The Yuba County Five became an American legend of inexplicable loss, not because we understand what happened, but because we never will. Their families carried forward, but a wound remained. The not knowing proved crueler than any answer could have been. In 1978, 5 men drove into those mountains. 4 came back changed, barely alive, barely conscious, barely able to speak. 1 never came back at all. The questions remain sharper than any conclusion. What happened in those 72 hours? What forced them to abandon their car? What took Gary Mathias? Some say the mountains claimed them. Some say men did. Some say no explanation exists that the human mind could accept. The case files remain open. The mystery remains unsolved. And the Plumas National Forest keeps its ancient silence. This is the legacy of the Yuba County Five. 5 names forever, etched in America's catalogue of the unexplained. A mystery that refuses the mercy of conclusion. In the cold silence of those mountains, their story echoes still. Not as an answered question, but as an eternal, unanswered cry into the darkness.